Today's number? 95. That's how many dollars it costs to get a personalized video message from Nigel Farage on Cameo. The British politician made $180,000 on Cameo last year. That makes him the first politician in history to openly admit what his job actually is, specifically saying anything for money. Welcome to Prof Markets. I'm Ed Elson. It is September 23rd. Let's check in on yesterday's market vitals. A tech-driven rally pushed the major indices to record-closing highs. Nvidia led the way, climbing 4% on plans to invest $100 billion in OpenAI. The dollar fell, breaking a three-day rally. Meanwhile, gold reached another record. And finally, BYD shares dropped 4% on news that Berkshire Hathaway has fully exited its stake in the Chinese electric vehicle maker. Okay, what else is happening? President Trump announced a big change to the H-1B visa program, specifically an entry fee. In order to attain an H-1B to live and work in America, you must now pay $100,000. To put that into perspective, the fee to enter the H-1B lottery used to be $5,000. That lottery will now be replaced by a, quote, weighted selection process that favors the highest paid positions. In sum, we are about to see a huge decline in H-1B workers. Now, a quick reminder, what is the H-1B visa? Well, this is a program that goes back to the H.W. Bush administration. It was designed to attract highly skilled workers, people with specialty knowledge, engineers, software developers, computer scientists. And the idea was to bring the world's best and brightest into the country and have them build value for American companies versus foreign companies. And indeed, that is exactly what happened. Some of our greatest entrepreneurs, our greatest business people came to the US on the H-1B. People like Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, or Sundar Pichai, the CEO of Google, Jeffrey Skoll, the president of eBay, and most notably, Elon Musk, the CEO of Tesla. Yes, Elon was able to stay in America thanks to an H-1B. Without the H-1B, we wouldn't have Tesla or SpaceX or Neuralink, or at least they wouldn't exist in the US. And in fact, Elon has recognized this fact. Just last year, he wrote, quote, "The reason I'm in America, along with so many critical people who built SpaceX, Tesla, and hundreds of other companies that made America strong, is because of the H-1B. Quote, I will go to war on this issue, the likes of which you cannot possibly comprehend." Well, I guess he did go to war. He donated nearly $300 million to the Trump campaign, but it turned out to be more of a war against himself. The H-1B hasn't been eliminated per se, but it has definitely been put way out of reach for many, many workers. After this change, H-1B issuance is expected to plummet this year, and that makes sense, considering the average H-1B worker earns about $94,000 a year, which is less than the entry fee you'd have to pay to even make that salary in the first place. Now, why is Trump doing this? Well, the idea is to encourage companies to hire American workers instead of foreign workers. And that is fair enough. But we should also note that this is quite a reversal from Trump's previous position on skilled immigration, which he promoted throughout the campaign. One of his promises, for example, was to give a green card to every foreign student who graduates from an American college. This is a clip from an interview on the All In podcast.
And it could have been done here. And a bigger example is that you need a pool of people to work for your companies. You have great companies and they have to be smart people. Not everybody can be less than smart. You need brilliant people. And we force the brilliant people, the people that graduate from college, the people that are number one in their class from the best colleges, you have to be able to recruit these people and keep the people. It was such a big deal. Somebody graduates at the top of the class. They can't even make a deal with the company because they don't think they're going to be able to stay in the country. That is going to end on day one.
That was in June 2024, so before the election. And here we are, a little over a year later. Not only has that position been abandoned, it has also essentially been reversed with this H-1B move. So what does this mean for our economy? What does it mean for tech, which is, of course, highly reliant on foreign skilled work? Well, here to help us answer that, we have Peter Harrell from the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. He also served in the National Security Council and the National Economic Council under President Biden. Okay, Peter Harrell, thank you for joining me on the program.
Ed, it's great to be on.
So Trump has issued this new entry fee. If you want to get an H-1B, you got to pay $100,000. A lot of implications for the economy, especially for big tech. But first, I just want to get your initial reactions. What are kind of your initial thoughts? What are the implications of this move?
Yeah, so this is a big move out of the administration. Obviously, the administration has taken a tough on immigration set of policies across the board, but this is really the first time they seem to be moving against sort of high-skill immigration as opposed to more blue-collar kind of immigration, people crossing the border. It is clearly going to have implications for the tech sector. The tech sector is the biggest user of these visas, which basically let people with higher skilled professional qualifications come to the U.S. for between 1 and 6 years to work in specialty fields. Clearly going to have implications for the tech sector, but that's not the only sector that this is going to hit. Although we think about H-1Bs as being some of the big tech platform companies as well as startups. Elon Musk was famously an H-1B early in his career when he was getting some of his early companies started. It is also used by doctors, hospitals to bring, specialty doctors in. It's used by universities and nonprofits to bring policy researchers and academic researchers into the United States. Well, it's probably over half a tech story. It's by no means only a tech story for employers here in the United States.
I just want to read you a quote from Reed Hastings, who's of course, the founder of Netflix, who actually supported this move. He said, quote, "I've worked on H-1B politics for 30 years. Trump's $100,000 per year tax is a great solution. It will mean H-1B is used just for very high value jobs, which will mean no lottery needed and more certainty for those jobs." I want to get your reactions to his view that this is actually a good thing. What is the economic argument as to why putting on this $100,000 entry fee would actually be good for companies, for tech companies, and for the economy?
Yeah, so I think there are a couple of arguments in favor of this move. And I should begin by saying, watching the Trump administration over the last, 8 months, 9 months now, Ed, I think this is probably in some sense a move that was driven by A, Trump being tough on immigration, and B, this is a president who shows he wants to look for money wherever he can find it, right? And this is a chance for him to get some additional revenue for the U.S. government. So that's probably what's driving this. But what are the kind of positive policy rationales potentially for this move, or what are the potential upsides? Well, the first is, although the H-1B program started back in the early 1990s, was intended to bring a diverse range of high-skilled workers to the United States, there is some evidence, and this is, I think, what Mr. Hastings is talking about, there is some evidence that over the last decade or so, a handful of relatively large tech companies has figured out how to run the system in a way that benefits them. So if you look at the list of who the largest users of H-1B visas are, it is a couple of the big tech platform companies like Amazon, and then it's a couple of the Indian IT outsourcing companies that have used this to get workers to come to the U.S. And so, there are a number of these companies that are getting several thousand of these visas per year each. And so I think there is an argument that for the tech users of this visa, extracting a fee from them will probably force them to focus their hiring under H-1B on higher value employees rather than on kind of middle value employees. And I see the argument there for that. Now, that is not an argument for the NGO users, the small business users, the kind of non-big tech platform users who I think will find behind $100,000 fee makes the difference between their ability to bring in talent that they want to bring in and their ability to bring that talent in or not. I think the hospital, this is a major issue for them. Maybe less of an issue for Amazon or Infosys, which may decide they eat some of the fee here. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to why do we have the H-1B in the first place? And the whole idea is it's to make us competitive in technology and engineering, competitive in all of the highly skilled work sectors. But, we're in the middle of this AI race, especially with China. And you compare this to Trump's stance basically just a year ago, where he seemed to be very pro-skilled immigration. There was at one point, he was saying that he wanted to give green cards to any foreign student who graduated from a U.S. university. It appeared that it was his view that in order to be competitive in technology, we need to do whatever we can to attract as much skilled talent as we can from abroad. And it appears that this is going to reverse that, or at least that's how it appears on its face. I'm just wondering what you think of that. Is this going to hamper our ability to compete on AI and in technology at large?
Well, so it probably is and it isn't. It probably is not going to hamper Meta Platforms' ability to bring in an engineer it wants to bring in because, we've seen the reports that Zuck is spending, $100 million to buy an engineer, an extra $100K for the visa probably isn't going to be dispositive to what Zuck wants to do. But where I think it will be harmful will be on more of the, upstart AI companies, more companies that are trying to get their feet off the ground, who already find this H-1B system to be extremely complicated to navigate, and who now are going to have to come up with $100,000 of cash on top of all that complexity and legal fees. And so I think in a way what you're going to see is a system that some of the existing big tech guys will be kind of, okay, fine, we'll bring in a couple of people we really want to bring in. We'll eat the cost. We may not bring in some of the mid-scale, lower, mid-scale people we otherwise would have brought in. But I do worry the real losers here are going to be the startups, the folks who were bringing in, Elon when Elon was a kid, for whom this is real money. And that, of course, has historically been a big part of American innovation. And the administration's going to need to think about that part of the ecosystem if they don't want to cede our innovative edge to our competitors.
Yes. One really interesting stat here that I did not realize, but 3/4 of H-1B workers are from India. It used to be kind of more diverse, more balanced a while ago, but it's now 75%. We're bringing in people from India. Just wondering, to what extent does this affect our relationship with India? And given what we've seen in terms of these tensions, especially with tariffs over the past few weeks, I wonder if it's possible that this is really targeted at India in some way. Does this affect our relationship with the nation?
So it certainly has affected our relationship in the sense that we saw, Indian markets get a little bit rattled after this announcement. We've seen obviously concern out of Indian political leadership. I'll be very interested to see whether this issue plays into the U.S.-India trade negotiations. And I have no inside information as to whether that's happening. But one thought I did have when I saw this news breaking on Friday and through the weekend was, there's a provision buried in the executive order that basically says, yes, we're having this $100,000 cap or this $100,000 fee, but the Secretary of Homeland Security can waive that fee for classes of immigrants or for individual immigrants or for firms if the secretary decides that she wants to. And one thought I had is, would the Trump administration tell the Indians as part of the trade negotiations, hey, we'll give you 20,000 free H-1Bs if we get to yes on the trade deals. Again, I have no inside information on that, but that is an option they seem to have legally given themselves, given this kind of broad exception they have created for the broad potential exception they've created for themselves. So, but it is clearly going to be an issue in the U.S.-India relationship.
Yeah. Just want to get your view on the impetus for this. As I mentioned earlier, a year ago, he seemed to have almost the opposite stance on this issue of skilled immigration, and now it appears to be reversing. I'm wondering, what is the reason for this? Why have they pursued this strategy? What is it hoping to accomplish? Who's in his ear? Or perhaps he came up with this on his own. But why do you think he is doing this when you get down to it?
Well, I think that this combines two things we know Trump is interested in. One is a tough line on immigration, right? This just lets him look tough on immigration, where he can say previously was free, or not really free, but a few $1,000s, and now it's $100,000. So I think he likes the messaging of toughness, even if there are some policy downsides. And second, I do think it's about the money. This is a guy we see, whether it is the NVIDIA rev share deal for chip sales to China, or whether it is taking, equity in Intel. This is a guy who's looking for kind of odd sources of government revenue somewhere. And I think this was kind of an issue that let him combine both those interests. He can appear tough on immigration, and he can claim he's getting money for the federal government. I don't think you have to overthink that with this particular president.
Yeah. The other thing we saw is this rollout of the Gold Card visa program. You can now pay $1 million to live in the US. Just wondering if you had any reactions to that move and perhaps what the economic implications of that program will be.
I mean, we'll have to see the economic implications of that program, but the fact that he announced the Trump Gold Card and the H-1B reform, or the H-1B fee on the same day, reinforced in my mind that the money was a piece of this H-1B policy, right? I mean, he's looking for ways to raise money through immigration. So the Gold Card basically is an expedited visa green card for high net worth individuals coming to the U.S. who are willing to pay $1 million. We've previously had policies where immigrants who are investing a lot of money here in the U.S. So it's not conceptually all that different from the past, except A, named after the president, B, the money is being paid to the government rather than being invested in communities in the United States, and C, really just seems to be a visa for sale kind of system that we've often criticized other governments for adopting. Whether it works, I think we'll just have to see what the demand is. I mean, Trump says we might do 80,000 of these a year, I think is what he said. We'll have to see if there's demand for that out there.
All right, Peter Harrell, really appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us on the show.
Thank you so much for having me on, Ed.
We'll be right back. And if you're enjoying the show so far, be sure to like and subscribe to the Prof G Pod YouTube channel at the link below.
Support for the show comes from Grunz. An apple a day keeps the doctor away, yada, yada, yada. The truth is that even if you enjoy fruits and vegetables, it can still be tedious to get all the nutrients your body needs. So here's a tip. Add Grunz to the mix. Grunz isn't a multivitamin, a greens gummy, or a prebiotic. It's all of those things and then some at a fraction of the price. And bonus, it tastes great. All Grunz daily gummy snack packs are vegan, nut, gluten, dairy-free, with no artificial flavors or colors, and they're packed with more than 20 vitamins and minerals, with more than 60 nutrient-dense ingredients and whole foods. And for a limited time, you can try their Gruny Smith apple flavor just in time for fall. It's got the same snackable, packable, full-body benefits you've come to expect, but this time, these taste like you're walking through an apple orchard in a cable knit sweater, warm apple cider in hand. Grab your limited edition Gruny Smith Apple Gruns, available only through October. Stock up because they will sell out. Get up to 52% off when you go to gruns.co and use the code MARKETS.
We're back with Prof G Markets. The White House has unveiled new details on the TikTok deal. The deal is completely finalized, according to White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt. Oracle will oversee the retraining of the app's algorithm, which it will lease from ByteDance. Meanwhile, over the weekend, Trump said that Michael Dell and the Murdoch family could take part in the deal. And as we covered previously, a group of American investors will own roughly 80% of the new entity, as well as hold 6 out of 7 of the board seats. That leaves ByteDance with less than 20% of the equity in the new business. Okay, for an inside look at these developments, our producer Claire Miller spoke with Dan Primack, business editor at Axios and author of the daily Axios Pro Rata newsletter. He has been in touch with a senior White House official, and he's also been in touch with someone who is personally involved in this deal.
Let's start with the core issue of the algorithm. Last week, there was talk of licensing it from ByteDance. Now there's talk of leasing a copy of it and that Oracle will secure it somehow. Seems like a lot of semantics. What is going on with the algorithm from your understanding?
Yeah, so there's going to be what they're calling a lease. So basically, a copy of the TikTok algorithm will get made. ByteDance will retain the original algorithm. That copy will go to what they're calling TikTok US, which is going to be controlled by Silver Lake and Oracle and Andreessen Horowitz and other US investors. And at that point, that copy, they're going to be able to retrain and also continue to modify it. And the best way I can kind of describe this is, imagine someone made a drawing and made a photocopy for you. They would hold on to the original drawing, but you could do whatever you wanted with the photocopy. You could draw additional things. You could fold it. You could change the color, et cetera, and that would be yours. And the reason for this arrangement is basically that ByteDance is going to continue to operate TikTok in countries outside of the US, so it still needs access to the algorithm as well.
Right. So what is Oracle's role here?
Oracle's basically the tech partner, and this isn't new. You know, Trump tried to ban TikTok at the end of his first term, at which point Oracle popped up as the tech partner. And even after that, at the beginning of the Biden administration, Oracle was working with TikTok on something called Project Texas. Oracle basically is two things. It's the tech partner. It's the one that's going to retrain the algorithm. It's the one that provides the data security. You basically sit on Oracle Cloud. And then also Oracle's going to be an equity investor in TikTok US, one of the 3 managing partners, I guess you could say, of this new company.
All of this new information has been coming from the White House. Has Beijing weighed in here? Because last week, it seemed like China was basically saying ByteDance would hold on to the algorithm and license it. It seems like they were not on the same page going into that phone call with Trump.
I don't know how much distinction between the term license and lease there really is. I think it's a similar sort of thing. The official readout from the Chinese government was a lot more vague, or at least a little bit more circumspect. And what's unknown is that because there actually is some daylight between the two, or was that a bit of an attempt to save face by the Chinese government? The White House, granted, they have made promises in the past on things that haven't come to fruition, but they've been pretty consistent on this for the past several days. China, during the meeting in Madrid, approved of this during a call with Trump and Xi. They signed off, and that there's going to be actual paperwork signed shortly.
I wanted to ask about that. Is this really a framework, or is there a deal? Your sense is there is actual paperwork and a signature is incoming?
I think there's probably 2 parts. There's probably some sort of memorandum of understanding, which would be the framework, and then all the details have to get finalized. As of this morning, a senior White House official was acknowledging that the final price isn't necessarily determined yet. The final cap table for TikTok US, i.e. who all the investors are and what stake they'll all own, that's not entirely determined yet. And even potentially the US government is not going to take equity. They're not going to have a board seat or have a so-called golden share, but they are going to get the equivalent of kind of a banker fee for this, a finder's fee. And that doesn't seem to even be determined yet. So I think memorandum of understanding, but then Trump is signing a new executive order to kind of kick the can another 4 months. There's a bunch of time to actually paper over the final deal. And it's possible nothing official will be signed until the final closing paperwork.
Do you have any sense of what these deal terms might look like, what the pricing could be?
Honestly, I don't. The talk has been all over the place. What complicates this is a couple things. For starters, ByteDance is valued at kind of over, I believe, $300 billion in the private market, or maybe 250 or something like that. But TikTok is a relatively small part of its business. On the other hand, this isn't just a pure, okay, it makes this much money and thus you put a multiple on it. There's so much political leverage here on both sides of this, right? You kind of have a distressed seller to a certain extent, because if a deal doesn't happen, TikTok gets shut down. On the other hand, China obviously doesn't want to let it go for peanuts because that makes them look bad. So I think that the numbers are a little bit complicated to figure out. The only thing we really know for sure is that ByteDance and its investors will own just under 20% of TikTok US if this goes through.
You used the phrase save face, that ByteDance wanted to save face, or China wanted to save face by calling it a licensing deal. Do you see this deal as a loss for China?
I mean, it's a loss for China in the sense that one of its giant tech companies has been getting pushed around, sure. I think it's a loss in that. Now, look, if it turns out that it's for $1 trillion valuation, then I'll reconsider. But right now, sure, it's a loss, right? This is not the sort of thing that China wants to see one of its companies have to do. ByteDance originally had no interest in selling TikTok. Again, it's not the main part of its business, but it's a nice crown jewel in its portfolio.
Over the weekend, Trump said that the Murdochs and Michael Dell are involved. Do you have any intel on that?
Yeah, so it's true, and it's kind of shorthand. In terms of Michael Dell, his family office a couple of years ago merged with an investment bank / private equity firm called BDT. So there's now this firm, you can Google it, it's called BDT plus MSD Capital, I think, or something like that. That's the one who's working on this. So it's partially Michael Dell's money. There's also other money. And then when it comes to the Murdochs, Lachlan and Rupert, and this is, of course, ironic because Trump is suing Rupert Murdoch as part of a lawsuit with the Wall Street Journal. But that's going to get done apparently via Fox Corp, the actual company. So it's not Lachlan and Rupert reaching into their personal checkbooks. This is being done through the company.
Okay, understood. And would you say that's the same structure applies for Oracle and Larry Ellison, or do you have any sense of whether Larry will be personally involved in this deal?
Unclear right now. Oracle, again, is interesting because they've been involved with TikTok and ByteDance for so long. And went back in 2019, when there was first talk of divestiture, Oracle considered being an equity partner, then didn't want to be, then it was, then it wasn't. And now it seems like it's going to be an equity partner yet again. It's unclear right now if this will just be Oracle money or if Larry Ellison will put some of his own in, although he could also contribute some Oracle shares, which is kind of the same thing.
When I think about where it seems like this app is headed, into the hands of investors, including the Murdochs and the Ellisons. I think about what happened with X, or Twitter, when Elon took over. Advertisers fled, users dropped off. Do you see TikTok going in the same direction? Like, will Americans stay on this app?
Well, Americans have been told for the past 5 years that the Chinese government controls this and that they're watching everywhere you go, and Americans keep flocking to the app. So I'm not sure Americans necessarily really care. I think so long as the performance of the app continues to be good. I think that was a bigger issue with X/Twitter. Remember, with X/Twitter, Elon Musk came in and he fired everybody, and he wanted to change it. That was the point, right? He wanted to buy it, not just to control it, but to make significant changes. There's no indication here that's what Silver Lake or Oracle or Andreessen Horowitz want to do. I think they think it's a decent business that they could make better, perhaps, and that this is a good opportunity for them. Elon talked so much about, bots were ruining Twitter, et cetera. No one's suggesting that the underlying algorithm has any problems with it. In fact, I believe the buyers feel that it is a more addictive algorithm than Instagram's or X's. So I don't believe you're going to see the same thing. We don't know necessarily who would run TikTok US, but that'll be up to Andreessen, Oracle, et cetera. I wouldn't be surprised if the current management of that company, which is based in the United States, continues to manage it, at least for the most part. I think it's worth noting there's still some people who are who are involved in the deal on both sides who are still a little bit in the dark. There's a lot to still be determined. And what I'd say is, I wrote a column about this today in the Axios Pro Rata newsletter, and at the very end of it, it basically said the deal's not done till it's done. And somebody who was pretty heavily involved in the deal wrote back and said that from their perspective, that's probably the most accurate statement that could be made about the situation right now. So there's a lot of kind of trust but verify here. There is a framework, but really this has been so complicated. And it's honestly kind of gone on for 5 years or 6 years until it's really done. And all the paperwork is signed and everyone gets to walk away with their cash. There isn't yet a TikTok deal.
Yeah, do you think that, there's been a flurry of news on this in the past week. Do you think we're still 4 months out, based on that extended deadline?
I think we could be. I mean, look, these kinds of transactions, this is basically a corporate carve out, right? And these sorts of transactions, even with no controversy or political overtones, just take a bunch of time to get done. There's just a lot of paperwork and things that need to get done. The only, by the way, the only kind of caveat I would say to all of this, or not even a caveat, but like thing to watch is this has been used, TikTok has been used as a trade bargaining chip by both the US and by Beijing. That deal between the two countries still isn't signed. We're talking here about a lease of an algorithm. A lease can be canceled, potentially, even if the deal closes, right? They could cancel the contract, or maybe it's not in perpetuity. So there's still some kind of outstanding things there that could become, monkeys in the wrench.
All right. Dan, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
That was Dan Primack, business editor at Axios and author of the daily Axios Pro Rata newsletter. Well, on Monday's episode, we discussed the rise of the Ellison family, their takeover of media from Paramount to Warner Brothers and potentially TikTok. We discussed how this is becoming a trend, how billionaires, and in many cases pro-Trump billionaires, are spending their billions to buy up and control the largest media assets in the world. And this news essentially just re-emphasizes what we already said. It won't just be Larry Ellison and Jeff Yass, two of Trump's closest associates, controlling TikTok. It will also be, perhaps, Rupert Murdoch, the mastermind behind Fox News. Those are the people who will own the most ascendant social media asset in the world. Those are the people who will own the app from which 1/3 of young Americans get their news. Those are the people who will have a direct impact on the minds of 170 million Americans. Basically, the largest audience in the country. But this also highlights something larger, and that is this question of who owns the media. I mean, for a long time, it was thought that the left owned the media, the liberal media, the establishment left, the leftist mainstream. These are ideas, these are terms that have been thrown around a lot and that still are thrown around a lot. Many people still say and believe that the mainstream media is captured by the left. But let's just be clear. If ever that was true, there is no longer any doubt. The right controls the media. Whether it is TV, where Fox News commands 3 times the viewership of MSNBC, or podcasts, where all the biggest shows are pro-Trump, Tucker Carlson, Ben Shapiro, Megyn Kelly, Joe Rogan, or tech, where the most influential social media platforms are controlled by people who are friends with the president or who have donated to the president. X, Instagram, Facebook, and now potentially TikTok, to be owned by the Ellisons and, yes, the Murdochs. There is not one corner of American media that isn't captured or controlled by the right at this point. Now, that isn't to say that the same wasn't true at one point of the left. The left certainly has had its fair share of media control. But it is to say that that is no longer true. This idea, this complaint that the left controls the media, it's just no longer a valid complaint. It does not compute with reality. That isn't a value judgment. That isn't a stance on what's right or what's wrong. It is simply a statement of what is. It is a recognition of what's true and what's false. The right controls the government. The right controls the law. And in 2025, the right controls the media. So this story of the underdog or the silenced or the suppressed, I'm sorry, it doesn't work anymore. It just isn't true. This is a story of the powerful. This is a story of the dominant. And ultimately, this is a story of total and complete control. Thanks for listening to Prof G Markets from Prof G Media. If you liked what you heard, subscribe to our YouTube channel and tune in tomorrow for more.